Well, 20 years ago, when I was in the middle of a different line of work, writing drama television series in Los Angeles, I had a revelation while waiting for my car at a parking valet after a party. Standing beside me was a wise, Oscar-winning actor, director, writer who had a couple more decades of experience in show business than I did and had enjoyed more luck than bad luck in his career. And he asked me what I was working on, and I told him about a couple of scripts that I was juggling, making sure that I didn't sound naive enough to think that those scripts were definitely going to get made. I thought I was layering in just the right amount of pessimism to sound professional, to sound like a realist. His eyes found mine, and he said softly, "Optimism is a choice. Pessimism is a choice too. You can choose optimism." Then he got into his car, and I was left there realizing I'd heard something very important. And that's when I began trying to teach myself for the very first time in my life to choose optimism. And after a while, I actually got pretty good at it. I came to realize that choosing pessimism as an emotional defense against disappointment does not work. If you suffer a loss, you're going to be in just as much pain, whether you saw that loss coming or you didn't. And so I want to repeat to you tonight what that wise man said to me that night. Optimism is a choice. There is no reason for you not to go to sleep tonight without hope. Nelson Mandela went to sleep every night with hope. For 27 years, Nelson Mandela fell asleep with hope in his heart in the Robben Island prison. Nelson Mandela was an optimist. Nelson Mandela always believed he was going to get out of prison. He remained an optimist. For those 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela had more reason to be a pessimist than any of us have ever had. Nelson Mandela was an optimist for his future freedom when he was in prison and for the future of his country. In his inauguration speech as president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela said this:
"We have triumphed in the effort to implant hope in the breasts of the millions of our people."
If Nelson Mandela could choose optimism, could choose hope, you can choose optimism. You can choose hope. If your hope is that Kamala Harris wins the presidency, you can be thankful that Kamala Harris and her staff have run as near perfect a presidential campaign as we have ever seen. Kamala Harris has justified your hope, and Kamala Harris has earned your hope. This is not the time to forget how to hope. Now is the time to enjoy that hope. Share that hope. Share that hope with your family, with your children, with your friends. Optimism is a choice. Hope is a choice. Choose hope. On this final day of the presidential campaign, the candidates made their closing statements to the country with Vice President Harris, as always, trying to unite the country.
We all have so much more in common than what separates us. There is power in that. There is power in that. And there's lasting power in that.
And of course, in Donald Trump's closing statement, he praised a convicted rapist and said he wished he could see the convicted rapist punch Kamala Harris, violently attack Kamala Harris. The convicted rapist is former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, who was sentenced to 6 years in prison for rape, which did not in any way diminish Donald Trump's admiration for Mike Tyson, since Donald Trump has been found to have committed what a judge called the equivalent to the definition of rape by a civil jury in New York City. And of course, on the Access Hollywood tape, Donald Trump is a self-confessed, repeated sexual assaulter.
I know Iron Mike, and he's a great guy, Mike Tyson. A great guy. He's a good man. Hey, Mike's been through a lot, but he could fight. Let me tell you, that guy could fight. But Can you imagine Mike? Oh, he says, put Mike in the ring with Kamala. That would be interesting.
Donald Trump, presidential candidate, says the convicted rapist is a good man. The Trump crowd, of course, cheered for the convicted rapist being given the chance to punch Kamala Harris, to knock out Kamala Harris. The Trump rally-goers should never be mistaken. With most Trump voters, 99% of those voters have never been to a Trump rally, would never go to a Trump rally. It's mostly repeat customers at those free Trump rallies. And just when you thought it was impossible for a candidate to be stupider than Donald Trump, we get 40-year-old James David Vance, who was unable to stay on the Trump campaign message about garbage for the final hours of the campaign. You will recall that the Trump campaign spent the last several days lying about Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage, which the president very clearly did not do. And for anyone who was confused about it, President Biden clarified that he did not call any people or person garbage. He called the racist jokes at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally garbage. Donald Trump, prior to Madison Square Garden, has called all Democrats garbage. He's used that word. Donald Trump has been calling Americans garbage in his speeches for a very long time. But the immediate lying stance the Trump campaign adopted is that it's absolutely outrageous for anyone to call another human being garbage. Trump fanatics, including Donald Trump Jr., apparently dressed up in garbage bags, trash bags, for Halloween to try to comedically make the point that no one should ever call another human being garbage. Donald Trump struggled to climb into a garbage truck on the campaign trail last week to try to reinforce the moralistic message that no one should ever call another human being garbage or trash or anything like that. And today, the stupidest vice presidential candidate in history blew the whole charade about the Trump campaign's delicate sensitivity about calling people garbage or, in this case, trash.
We are going to take out the trash in Washington, D.C., and the trash's name is Kamala Harris.
That man is 40 years old. If he lives his life the way his hero Donald Trump has, he's going to spend the next 38 years getting stupider. So when he is 78, the age Donald Trump is tonight, he will be even more incoherent than Donald Trump. But we can be very sure J.D. Vance will not be part of our politics when he is age 78, because his political career will surely end much sooner than that, possibly as soon as tomorrow night. This afternoon, Vice President Harris and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stopped by a Puerto Rican restaurant in Reading, Pennsylvania.
And you spoken to yes, yeah, we never put it on here now. Yeah. So I have to say, I eat no for breakfast. Yep. Which means I don't hear no.
You see, Governor Shapiro was in that shot in the restaurant there too. This is the live shot of the Art Museum in Philadelphia, known by some moviegoers as the Rocky Steps. Those were the steps Rocky ran up in that movie. The vice president spoke in the last hour in Pittsburgh. She's currently flying across the state of Pennsylvania for her final campaign speech right there at that location in Philadelphia. Oprah Winfrey is scheduled to speak. Lady Gaga is scheduled to perform. We are tracking the vice president's travel. We're keeping an eye on exactly what's happening there in Philadelphia. Joining us now from Philadelphia is Michael Tyler, the Harris-Walz campaign communications director. Michael, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. Why the choice of Philadelphia as the final stop tonight?
Yeah, well, Lawrence, thank you so much for having me this evening. Listen, we're here in Philadelphia. We're at the Rocky Steps. The vice president has been saying for months that we're the underdogs in this race. There's no greater underdog than Rocky. He frankly embodies the spirit of Philadelphia, but also the spirit of so many communities around this country, whether it's Philly, Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee, San Juan, Puerto Rico, the communities that Donald Trump is disrespected and demeaned for the better part of a decade. This is a man who thinks that he can build himself up by beating others down. But the problem for Donald Trump is that tomorrow, these communities across the country have the opportunity to send him back to Mar-a-Lago for good. We have the opportunity to turn the page. We have the opportunity to elect a new generation of leadership in Vice President Kamala Harris and have a president of the United States that is finally focused on the people, solving for their problems, their dreams, their aspirations. That is what tomorrow provides for people across this country. And so we're excited about the energy that we see here in Philadelphia and in all 7 battleground states across the country tonight. But we know that the work is not yet done. That tomorrow people across the country need to go and make sure that their voices are heard. So we're encouraging everybody to go to iwillvote.com, make sure they have a plan to vote so that we can finally turn the page on Donald Trump and elect Kamala Harris.
Michael, you know, the vice president covers a lot of points in her speeches and in these closing speeches. If there's one line, what would you say is the most important line in the vice president's final speeches?
Yeah, listen, I think she's been saying it on the ellipse. She's been saying it across the battleground states, and you'll hear her say it again tonight. It's what's behind me here. She's going to pledge to be a president for all Americans, right? She's going to be somebody who is not focused on what divides us, somebody who understands that as Americans we have far more in common, and that if we focus on what we have in common, if we focus on our shared values, if we focus on what is possible, there's no limit on what we can achieve as a nation. That has been her message since the day she stepped into this race as our candidate. It's going to be our message through the finish here. When we elect Kamala Harris tomorrow night, she is going to be that president for all Americans. And she's going to get to work every single day walking into the Oval Office with her to-do list, right? To lower costs for Americans, on housing, on healthcare, on groceries, to restore women's reproductive rights, to make sure that we can achieve all the things that we know are possible by actually working together and focusing on our unity. That stands in stark contrast to what we've seen out of Donald Trump, certainly throughout this campaign. But if you look at the course of the final few hours of this campaign, the final few days of this campaign, as he has turned into the worst version of himself, I think he's reminded the American people and those undecided voters of exactly why they fired him 4 years ago. And it's why that contrast, that split screen that you've seen between Madison Square Garden and the ellipse and what you're going to see tonight is exactly why you've seen undecideds, late-breaking undecideds, continue to move towards Vice President Harris because they're sick of the division. They're sick of the chaos. They are sick of somebody who's so consumed with his own petty grievances that he'll never focus on them. And they know that in Vice President Harris, they've seen somebody who's relentlessly focused on the American people and bringing people together. So again, tonight you'll hear her pledge to be a president for all Americans.
Michael, I know I've spoken to volunteers that you have had, especially volunteers who live in states like California and New York, where the Electoral College is in effect already decided, who have volunteered and have been making phone calls or knocking on doors in states like Pennsylvania and other swing states. How important has that massive national volunteer effort been, including from all those people who live outside the battleground states?
Yeah, it's been incredibly important. It's been incredibly important. Listen, we have known for some time that this is going to be a margin of error race. And so for us, that really comes down to margin of effort. And so that's why we're so excited by the fact that we've had tens of thousands of volunteers getting to work in this final weekend of this campaign. You look at the past couple of days, we've had 90,000 volunteers across the battleground states who knocked on over 3 million doors. In fact, if you include the work that was done today, we're now at over 4 million doors across the battleground states. And that is people who are coming to states like Nevada, Pennsylvania. I think in Pennsylvania, we knocked on over 1.5 million doors alone. And that work continues into tomorrow. And so our message here in the final hours of this campaign is, of course, make a plan to vote if you have not already voted. But if you have voted, make sure you go to go.kamalaharris.com. There's still time to sign up, go knock on some doors, make some phone calls, and reach those lower propensity voters who still have not yet made a plan to vote. Because again, in a margin of error race, it comes down to margin of effort, and we know that we need to turn out every voter possible to get to 270 electoral votes. We're on the precipice, but the work is not done.
Michael Tyler, Communications Director of the Harris Walz campaign, thank you very, very much for joining us on this final night of the campaign.
Thank you for having me. Everybody go vote.
Thank you. Coming up, one of the Democrats trying to make sure the Democrats keep control of the United States Senate. Ohio Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown will join us next.
Here's the thing, guys. We are fighting for a democracy. We are fighting for a democracy. And in a democracy, true leadership understands that the leader listens to the experts and listens to people who disagree with them. I will listen to people who disagree with me because I do not believe that people who disagree with me are the enemy. In fact, I will give them a seat at the table. That is what real leaders do. That is what strong leaders do. And I pledge to always put country above party and self, and to be a president for all Americans.
That was about an hour ago in Pittsburgh. The vice president is now on her way to Philadelphia for her final speech of the campaign tonight in Philadelphia. One of these states that we're watching is Ohio for the Senate race in Ohio. This is Senator Sherrod Brown's closing ad in that campaign.
Thank you for being honest and all the work you've done.
Sherrod Brown fights for workers every day.
And I really appreciate what you've done for Ohio and the country.
I just wanted to personally thank you for saving my dad's convention.
Sherrod Brown is a man of his word.
I'm one of those ladies over 50.
Sherrod Brown works for the people. He knows how to reach across the aisle and form alliances with Republicans and say, here's something that needs to get done. Let's work together.
Joining us now is Ohio's senior senator, Democrat Sherrod Brown, running for his fourth term in the Senate. He's the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee and a member of the Senate Finance Committee. And Senator Brown, does Ohio understand how important those committee assignments are, that you have a chairmanship that takes years to earn in the United States Senate?
Well, if they're watching Lawrence O'Donnell, they certainly understand the Finance Committee. So, yeah, they do, because the way I do this job is I go home every weekend, I listen to people, I hear ideas, I go back to Washington, I find a partner to get them done, and I stand up to these interest groups, and I use my position, the Finance Committee, to stand up to presidents of either party on trade, or to fight for Medicare, and the Banking Committee to stand up and keep Wall Street accountable, and to take on the drug companies and cap the price of insulin. So they don't care about committee assignments and titles, that they care about fighting for them and standing up to those interest groups. And, that's why they're spending so much money against me in this race, clearly, as you know, Lawrence.
Does this race on the final day, in the final hour, come down to a final issue?
It doesn't. It really comes down to whose side you're on. And as you know, I fought for the dignity of work. My opponent is a car dealer, a guy named Marino, and he fleeced his own employees out of $400,000. And then Raphael Warnock said, if he's going to do that to his employees, you can't really trust him to be a senator and represent them. And I've stood up for women's rights and reproductive rights. And my opponent wants a national ban on abortion with no exception. So that's why this kind of money's in this race. That's why they've spent more money against me than any Senate race in American history. It's why I ask people, it's not too late these last 24 hours. If you live in Ohio, go to SherrodBrown.com and volunteer and go door to door and make calls. If you don't live in Ohio, go to SherrodBrown.com and help us with our average online contributions, $30. It's how you fight this kind of big money, a few dollars at a time. So many people have helped us that way, and we ask again.
Your opponent, most of these Republicans have been trying to run away from or escape their position on reproductive freedom for women. But your opponent has been shown to be completely opposed to all forms of abortion and just a total ban.
Yeah, he said a lot of things, but he was caught on tape making fun of women over 50 and saying they're crazy. Why should they care about abortion rights if they're over 50? And he essentially mocked all Ohioans, 57% who voted for abortion rights, but he insulted, special insult for women over 50. And as my wife wrote in one of her Substack columns, you can see at the polls, pal, when you talk about women that way and you see this gender gap growing, we got a lot of strength among working men too, working class men, because of the dignity of work, but women especially have felt the insult from my opponent and seen that contrast with abortion rights and work and all the things and prescription drugs and keeping the Affordable Care Act, all of those issues.
Senator Sherrod Brown campaigning down to the last minute, as he always does. Thank you very much for joining us on this last night of the campaign. Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Well, the Vice President is making her way to Philadelphia for her final rally of the campaign. We'll bring you the latest from Philadelphia later in this hour. But first, today, the Harris-Walz campaign was also in Michigan, where Governor Tim Walz will actually rally tonight in Detroit. Michigan State Senator, Democratic Senator Mallory McMorrow will join us next. You're looking at the final campaign rally for Kamala Harris tonight in Philadelphia. She is on her way to Philadelphia. As we speak, she gave a speech in Pittsburgh, is now flying across the state to Philadelphia. There is a simultaneous rally going on in Detroit in Michigan. At this same time, Vice presidential candidate Tim Walz is scheduled to speak at that rally in Detroit. I think we have the picture from Detroit right now. Let's go to, there's Detroit.
She'll fight to make
and that is Gwen Walz, Tim Walz's wife, now speaking in Detroit. Let's listen to that.
High school. Now, we even shared a classroom with a divider right down the middle. And here's a question for you. Guess whose class was louder? Tim's. But every day I heard Tim encouraging his students, determined to help every single one reach their dreams. And that same quality is what makes Tim such an effective public servant. And I thank you, and I know he will make a fantastic partner to President Kamala Harris. So will you please join me in welcoming the next Vice President of the United States, my husband, Tim Walz.
Well, hello, Detroit. Thanks to the love of my life, Gwen, for her endless support and for coming along with me on this wild ride. I also want to use this as an opportunity to thank my amazing kids, Hope and Gus. You guys are what it's all for, and I couldn't be prouder of you. And thank you to all of you. You could probably tell from these rallies all across the country tonight, this team is running like everything's on the line, because everything's on the line. But I want to take tonight to talk about one issue in particular that really underlines the stakes in this election. So let me speak to the guys in the crowd tonight. I want you to think about the women in your life that you love. Their lives are at stake in this election. Donald Trump appointed those Supreme Court justices who repealed Roe versus Wade, and he brags about it. He is glad that those women you're thinking about and you love have fewer rights than their mothers and their grandmothers. More than 20 states across this country now have Trump abortion bans. But don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Trump said to all the women here, he'll be your protector. And then he added, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. Well, now we're seeing women turned away from emergency rooms, miscarrying in parking lots, whether they like it or not. Survivors of rape being forced to carry those pregnancies to term, whether they like it or not. Fertility clinics turning couples away at the door, whether they like it or not. Look, this is personal for so many of us, Gwen and I included. We were only able to have that family because of fertility treatments. And I will be damned if anyone in this country should be denied that same right. When Congress passes that bill to restore reproductive freedom, President Harris will sign it into law. Folks, this is getting pretty simple now. Kamala and I trust women. It's that simple. Now, tomorrow, women all across America of every age, both parties, are going to send a loud and clear message to Donald Trump, whether he likes it or not. So here it is, folks. It's our moment. The election is here. The momentum's on our side. With 1 or 2 votes per precincts in the state of Michigan, we can win the whole damn thing. We can. We take nothing for granted. Now, Gwen and I, we think the word hope is the most powerful word in the English language. In fact, it was so powerful when we finally had that child and that little girl, we named her Hope. But while hope is a great word and a great name, it's not a damn plan. So it's time for the pep talk, folks. We are in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left. The game is tied. But we've got the damn ball, and we got the best quarterback on the field in Kamala Harris. We don't get tired because we know there's plenty of time to sleep when you're dead. And we believe in the promise of America. We just have to fight for it. Here's the deal, folks. There's going to be a day you're going to be sitting in that rocking chair, and you're going to be rocking on that porch, and a little one's going to come home from school and ask, what did you do in the 2024 election where the American experiment survived, where the rule of law survived, where decency survived? And you're going to be able to answer every damn thing I could. Every damn thing I could. So, Detroit, it's time. And as the vice president says, when we vote, Michigan, bring this thing home for America. Let's go. Let's go.
That was Tim Walz speaking in Detroit. Joining our discussion now from Philadelphia is the Pennsylvania Speaker of the House, Joanna McClinton. And Speaker McClinton, I believe that Tim Walz's speech was also delivered to the audience in Philadelphia. Did they manage to pull that off? I guess we don't have Speaker McClinton at the moment. She is there somewhere in that rally in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, where they're waiting for the vice president to arrive. The vice president, I'm told, has landed at the airport in Philadelphia. And I think we now have Speaker Joanna McClinton. Speaker, are you there? Okay, we don't have her. We're going to continue to cover the events as they're unfolding in Pennsylvania tonight. Vice President Harris has had to travel from a very important speech, closing speech in Pittsburgh, across the state to Philadelphia for her final speech of the campaign, which will be in Philadelphia. We'll be right back after this break. And there is the Vice President and Doug Emhoff leaving the plane in Philadelphia. She is on her way to her final rally of the campaign at the Art Museum in Philadelphia. The crowd is waiting. The crowd has been primed. We've lost that shot at the airport. And there is the shot at the Art Museum in Philadelphia. There is the shot where the vice president will be speaking as soon as she gets there. We are joined now, I hope, from Philadelphia by the Pennsylvania Speaker of the House, Joanna McClinton. Speaker McClinton, how important is the final stop in Philadelphia?
Well, it is very important that our vice president gets here herself to close the argument on why America must turn the page from the past, from the division, from the hatred, from the misogyny, from taking all of our rights away, and elect her tomorrow to be our next president.
As you have worked your way through this campaign, do you believe that there is a single most important final issue for Pennsylvania voters, or is it a group of issues?
It's certainly a group of issues. Pennsylvania voters care about the kitchen table issues. How are they able to put food on the table, buy a house, expand their business? And Vice President Harris and Governor Walz have a plan for a new way forward to help first-time homeowners get grants so that they don't have to struggle, to help small business owners get forgivable loans so they can expand their businesses. People in Pennsylvania aren't only thinking about the freedom to vote, the future of our democracy as our nation was born right here in Philly, but so much more is on the mind of voters. And this is a critical state to get her across the finish line.
And you have a critical Senate race in Pennsylvania with Senator Bob Casey up for re-election. Do you think that the Casey campaign and the Harris campaign are basically on the same track for a possible win tomorrow night?
Absolutely. When we think about all of the great ideas that Kamala and Walz have, they need a legislature to do the hard work and implement those ideas. And Senator Bob Casey, our senior senator here in the Commonwealth, is key to that victory. He was on the stage with me tonight making his pitch on why it's important that folks aren't only focused on the White House, but of course know about this critical Senate seat. And of course, all the way down ballot where I am in the State House, that's also on the line.
Pennsylvania Speaker of the House, Joanna McClinton, thank you for joining us tonight. And you can tell everyone there that we just saw the vice president get in the car at the airport. So you can figure out how long it'll take her from get to the airport to where you are there now.
Thank you. I'll let them know.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. And there is the shot of the rally in Philadelphia. The vice president has landed at the airport in Philadelphia, having flown across the state, Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh, where she already delivered a speech tonight. She will make that speech in Philadelphia as soon as she arrives there, and possibly in the next few minutes. We are joined now by the majority whip of the Michigan State Senate, Democratic State Senator Mallory McMorrow. Vice President Harris was in Michigan yesterday trying to close the deal in Michigan. Everything looks to be polling within the margin of error in Michigan, and so we will find out when the votes are counted, I guess.
That's exactly right. But I want to touch on what you opened the show with, which is that we should feel like we can feel hope again. Hope is a choice. And I just want to take a minute and acknowledge how stunning it is that the Harris campaign has orchestrated 7 simultaneous rallies in the battleground states. You cut from Detroit to Philadelphia, and it feels like it's so rare that we get to share these moments as a country. And it's just such a beautiful way to drive home the vision that she's sharing with us, that we can be together again. But we have, little over 24 hours to do that. In Michigan, the margin of Trump's win in 2016 was 2 votes per precinct. So we should all take that feeling and call 2 of our friends, talk to our family members. And that is what is going to put her over the top and let us feel that hope again and finally breathe for the first time in, let's be honest, 10 years.
I can't remember the last time a Democratic presidential campaign is coming to an end without hearing all sorts of grumbling, sometimes from unnamed sources in different states and in the Congress, people saying, candidate didn't come to Michigan enough or didn't come to Arizona enough. I haven't heard any criticisms of this campaign.
You're right. It's been flawless and in a truncated timeline. I have been so impressed by the campaign that Kamala Harris has been able to put together, bringing together a coalition that frankly hasn't existed before, empowering white dudes for Harris and win with Black women and white women and Asian women, all of these people, letting them have their own voices and feel like they are a part of the future in a way that we haven't felt. And it's really refreshing to just feel empowered again and feel like we own our future and not Donald Trump. And we can just not talk about him after tomorrow. And that's going to be really nice.
It seems that the current elected Democrats statewide in Michigan seem like a source of hope for the Harris campaign.
And we should be. You know, Michigan, we took a historic Democratic trifecta in 2022 as a battleground state, as a Midwestern state, largely led by women, dynamic, practical, no BS women who get together and get things done, but also have a personality. Something that has been so wonderful as a woman here in elected office in Michigan is there are so many of us that we get to be ourselves. And I think that has resonated back up to the Harris Walz campaign, to see everybody as they are, to see this country as diverse and beautiful as it is, and to celebrate that in these final days.
Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, thank you very much for sharing your hope with us tonight.
Thank you.
And you are seeing that live shot in Philadelphia. That's where the vice president will be speaking. We expect her to be speaking possibly within a few minutes after the 11 p.m. hour. That is tonight's last word. And tonight's last words are choose hope.